Welcome to Family Basics 101. I'm Dr. Bruce McClure, and as we begin a 5-part series of premarital counseling, we'll talk about some of the components that goes before the marriage. Let's begin the series by talking about the purpose. What is the true purpose of premarital counseling? We're talking about a counseling scenario, a consultation, a talk, a dialogue with two individuals before they get married. The before material is very significant in terms of ensuring after marriage the couple has a good foundation to begin their journey together. It is commonly believed that 1 out of every 2 marriages end in divorce within the first 2 years of a marriage. Others have suggested that the remaining 50% of those that are married are experiencing at some level or another some form of difficulty within the relationship. Now, this statistic may be of no interest to many individuals, except for the fact that a very large percentage of all marriages are conducted in conjunction with some type religious order. Why are such a high number of religious couples encountering such complex and also, I might say, apparently unresolved marital problems? One of the purposes of premarital counseling is to help coach couples before they get married into some of the questions, into some of the things that they must take a look at in their family history in order to make sure that they minimize some of the challenges once they say, I do. What are some of the questions that typically are to be dealt with before a couple is married? I think each couple must first find out, one from the other, have we been talking to each other? Have we been acquainted with each other long enough in detailed material, not just going out to dinner, not just watching movies, but are we knowledgeable enough of one another to even be considering this relationship called marriage? Another component that is often overlooked before couples marry is the age difference. So often couples will marry and they want to just be in love and just move on with the rest of their lives before they consider the impact of such a wide age variation and the impact it could potentially have on the relationship. For instance, if a young man is 30 years old and his fiance is 21 years old, that's a 9-year spread chronologically. The difficulty with that chronological spread is in most clinical settings we do not measure age variation just by the chronological clock. We also look at the psychological aging. So you take a 21-year-old female and for all practical purposes we may age her up 3 to 5 years. So that will put her at an age between 24 and 26 years old. But with the males, we typically will age them down 3 to 5 years. So you take a 30-year-old male and you age him down, let's say 3 years, then he's 27. But he may go into the relationship telling the young lady who's 21, I know more than you. I've been around longer than you. I'm wiser than you. And he's basing that upon his chronological age, when in reality, in terms of their psychological aging, They are about the same age. She's about 26, 27 psychologically, and so is he. But those are some of the things that are talked about in premarital counseling. We also must look at, have there been any previous engagements? Have there been any previous long-term relationships? We also look at, one of the most difficult questions to ask is, have you been sexually active with your future mate? One of the critical reasons for asking that question is, it brings to the issue trust. Oftentimes, if there's been sexual activity premarital and some type glitch happens in the relationship, it is not uncommon for trust to come up in the marriage. So a couple will come to the table and say, well, but you know I love you, and you know that I would never do this with anyone except you, my husband, or you, my wife. And that person may come back and say to you, well, that's not quite true, because you did it with me before we got married. So the premarital sex becomes a very crucial component in the premarital counseling. And if that has been an ongoing activity prior to the marriage, then it could potentially create complications once the couple is married. We also must look at the family history in terms of the dynamics between the potential husband, the potential wife, and the relationship of his extended family. How did the young man, how did the young lady interact with his father, with his mother? How did he interact? How did she interact with other siblings in her family? Was there abuse in either of the homes? All of these things must be discussed in the premarital content so that the couple can get a good picture of what the two becoming one will look like once they say I do. We must also discuss how the family look at finances. Two different individuals will have different philosophies about money in the home. We must also look at how was discipline meted out in the home, because if there are children in the relationship and you have two people becoming one, they may have two completely different philosophies about how discipline. Some people say, well, let's just talk to the child. Some people say, well, let's spank the child. Some people will say, let's do time out. Some people will say, let's do natural consequences. There must be a dialogue premarital about how the children will be reared in the relationship. There also must be an open dialogue premarital about your philosophy about the wife working, who manages the money, how conflict is handled if it arises between the husband and the wife. And the best predictor about how conflict will be handled will typically come from how was conflict handled in your biological setting where you were raised in your own personal home. In the book of 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 7, here's a note from Peter. He exhorts husbands to dwell with their wife according to knowledge. What he's simply saying is, in a marriage, there must be an awareness of what that relationship is all about. And the best place to find out how to be a good husband or how to be a good wife, yes, you're going to learn experimentally in the marriage, but there must be some discussions about what you know prior to saying I do. I'll see you back in class again next time. Don't be late and don't skip class.